Let's continue this conversation with David Des Roches. He's a professor at the National Defence University. He's also a former NATO Operations Director in the Office of the Secretary of Defence, and he's also speaking to us from Washington, D.C. Thanks very much for joining us on Al Jazeera. As Heidi might have alluded to there, the U.S. Defense Department says the deployment of these additional jets, fighters and warships is to mitigate any threats. But would this be interpreted as that?
Well, that's always the problem with preemptive defense. What one side sees as a defensive measure to signal, a willingness to deal with any offensive things, the other side may see as a signal for attack. And the worry is that in the absence of clear communications between both potential adversaries, you get into an involuntary ratcheting effect where both sides feel that they have to take a rather rash, precipitous action, or they will be at a vulnerability. So I think that the diplomatic efforts that accompany this are to say, look, we're not intending to attack you, but if you should think about attacking, understand we have considerable assets in the region. We'll remain to see whether that works or not.
We have so far heard responses from Iran, especially following developments in recent days, including the assassination of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh, which they've blamed Israel for. Is a response from Iran certainly inevitable? And if so, what might it look like? Because it wouldn't be necessarily similar to the attacks we saw a few months ago, would it?
No, I think that, the people, Iran uses Arabs to fight and die for Iranian interests against Israel. The Iranian skin in the game is very, very limited. So I think what we could expect would be attacks from the various proxy groups in Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. And then I think that we could also expect to see limited long-range missile strikes, possibly as well some IRGC actions against Jewish vice-Israeli interests overseas, which is in keeping with their past MO. But Iran's strategic concept is to do everything possible to avoid a retaliatory or a direct attack on the Iranian homeland. So they'll probably try to push it out to their proxies with a few, long-range strike missile strikes, just because they have to do that. They feel they have to do that.
Well, at this point, we've seen fairly contained skirmishes between Hezbollah and Israel, suggesting perhaps that both sides might want to limit whatever happens next. But is that about to change?
I don't think so. So let's start with Hamas. There have been no Hamas rocket strikes into Israel, which I think indicates that Israel has succeeded in destroying or disabling that capability, at least for now. Most analysts who look at the Hezbollah rocket and guided missile capability feel that that is being held by Iran in reserve to deter against a incapacitating strike against Iran's nuclear capability. So that's Iran's ace in the hole, and I don't think that they will expend that over an assassination of a Hamas chief. That's important for Iran, but it's not as important as their nuclear program. The wild card in all of this, however, is pride. Iran was humiliated by an assassination adjacent to the presidential palace. And so they may take irrational action just because they're motivated by pride and humiliation.
Would Israel be concerned at all by its capabilities, its capacity, its air defense system? It's ironclad, at least as far as we've seen, but it's also been overwhelmed in the last 10 months, hasn't it?
Well, no air defense system is ironclad. So what you have to do is establish a list of targets to defend, and then you put your assets up against it. And because of the asymmetry of costs, where it costs 10 to 100 times as much to take down a missile as it does to fire a missile. You can always overwhelm an air defense system, particularly if you coordinate the actions from the proxies and attack from multiple directions, the north from Lebanon, the east from Iran or from Iraq, and then the south from the Houthis. So it is theoretically pretty possible to overwhelm the system. The question is whether you can do it with a degree of accuracy to incapacitate Israel's ability to respond, and I don't think they can. So you don't just look at the defensive capabilities of Israel, you also look at what punishment would they inflict upon Iran or Iran's proxies. And that is the real essence of deterrence. And I think that discussion of that is kind of missing from the popular discussion here, but I think that is restraining Iranian actions.
We appreciate your time and your insights. Always good speaking to you, David Des Roches, professor at the National Defense University, as we follow events in the Middle East.
Thank you. It's an honor.